Sign the citation, ma'am. Last
I'm
warning.
not signing trash!
That's assault. Hands behind your back.
Turn
Now.
around! Let go of me!
Cuffs. Relax your hands.
This is ridiculous.
September 18th, 2024. Downtown Seattle, Washington. Officer Derek Coleman responds to what dispatch describes as a road rage incident in a hospital parking garage. A driver has allegedly blocked an ambulance bay, refused to move, and is now confronting hospital security. When Coleman arrives at the 4th level of Seattle Grace Medical Center's parking structure, he finds a scene that defies logic. A silver Mercedes SUV sits squarely in front of the emergency vehicle entrance, hazard lights flashing, engine running. Behind it, an ambulance with sirens blaring and lights rotating cannot access the ramp. The driver, later identified as 42-year-old Victoria Hayes, stands beside her vehicle arguing with a security guard, gesturing wildly toward the crowded parking levels above. She is wearing a designer pantsuit, heels that click against the concrete with each aggressive step, and an expression that radiates absolute certainty that she is in the right. The ambulance driver leans on the horn. Hayes doesn't even glance back. Officer Coleman approaches with his bodycam activated, already sensing this will not be a routine interaction. Hayes sees him coming and her face shifts from anger to something else entirely, a cold smile of recognition, as if the arrival of law enforcement is exactly what she wanted. This is a woman who believes the badge works for her, not against her. She has no idea that in exactly 8 minutes, her entire carefully constructed professional life will begin to collapse. If you want to see entitlement meet consequences in real time, hit that subscribe button right now, because this is about to get wild. Officer Coleman's first words are textbook professional. "Ma'am, I need you to move your vehicle immediately. You're blocking emergency access." Hayes doesn't move. Instead, she points upward toward the parking levels. "Do you see how full this garage is? I've been circling for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I have a meeting with the hospital board in 10 minutes, and there is nowhere to park." Coleman glances at the ambulance, its paramedics visible through the windshield, clearly frustrated. "Ma'am, that's an ambulance. It needs access now. You can circle back after you move." Hayes crosses her arms. "I'm not circling back. I'll lose this spot entirely. Someone will take it. This is the closest level to the administrative offices. I'm not going to be late because of poor planning on their part." Coleman feels his jaw tighten, but keeps his voice even. "Their part? Ma'am, you're blocking an emergency vehicle." Hayes steps closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "Look, I understand you have a job to do, but I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Cascade Health Systems. This hospital falls under my oversight. I'm here for a critical budget meeting. If I'm late, people lose funding. Programs get cut. Do you want to be responsible for that?" Coleman recognizes the tactic immediately. She's trying to shift moral responsibility onto him, making him the villain if he enforces basic traffic law. It's a power play, and it tells him everything he needs to know about how this woman operates. He takes a breath. "Ma'am, I don't care if you're the governor. Move your car now, or I'm citing you and having it towed." Hayes' expression darkens. The false friendliness evaporates. "You want to cite me? For parking?" Coleman nods. "For obstructing emergency services." That's a traffic violation and potentially reckless endangerment, depending on what that ambulance is responding to. Hayes laughs, sharp and dismissive. "Reckless endangerment? You're joking." Coleman doesn't smile. "I'm not. Move your vehicle." Hayes pulls out her phone. "I'm calling my attorney. And then I'm calling the chief of police. I play golf with Chief Martinez." "Do you know who Chief Martinez is, officer?" Coleman's patience is evaporating, but he maintains control. "Ma'am, put the phone down and move your car. Final warning." Hayes dials anyway, putting the phone to her ear. While it rings, she continues talking. "This is harassment. I'm a taxpayer. I fund your salary. And you're standing here, threatening me while that ambulance could just go around." Coleman glances back. The garage design makes going around impossible. The ambulance would have to reverse down 3 levels of spiral ramp, a maneuver that would take at least 10 minutes. Hayes knows this. She's counting on the officers backing down rather than creating a bigger scene. But Coleman has been a cop for 12 years. He's seen this playbook before. The phone call goes to voicemail. Hayes leaves a clipped message. "Richard, it's Victoria Hayes. I'm being harassed by an officer at Seattle Grace. Badge number." She squints at Coleman's chest, 729. "Call me back immediately." She hangs up and smirks at Coleman. "You just made a very big mistake." Coleman keys his radio. "Dispatch, I need a tow truck to Seattle Grace Medical Parking Level 4. And a supervisor. Standing by." "Copy that, 729. ETA on tow is 15 minutes. Supervisor is en route." Hayes' eyes widen. "You're actually calling a tow truck? For this?" Coleman nods. "You refused a lawful order. Your vehicle is obstructing emergency services. It's getting towed." Hayes' voice rises. Do you have any idea how much that car costs? Coleman shrugs. I know how much the tow and impound fees cost. About $400 plus 80 per day storage. Hayes steps forward, jabbing a finger toward Coleman's chest, but stopping just short of contact. You smug little prick. You think you're so powerful with that badge. Coleman takes a step back, creating distance. Ma'am, do not point at me. Keep your hands to yourself. Hayes doesn't lower her hand. For what? You'll arrest me? For pointing? Coleman's voice hardens. For assault if you make contact. Now step back. The ambulance driver leans on the horn again, a long sustained blast. Hayes whirls around and screams at the vehicle. I'm moving. Give me a second. Coleman corrects her. No ma'am. You're not moving. The tow truck is moving your car. You're going to stand over here with me and wait. Hayes turns back, her face flushed. This is insane. I'm going to have your job. Coleman has heard that threat at least 100 times in his career. It never gets old. You're welcome to file a complaint. Right now, I need your driver's license and registration. Hayes doesn't reach for her purse. Instead, she doubles down. I'm not giving you anything. You have no right to demand my identification. I'm not operating the vehicle. The engine is off. Coleman corrects her. The engine is running. I can hear it. And you were operating it when you blocked this access point. License and registration. Now, Hayes folds her arms again, a physical refusal. I'm not complying with an illegal order. Coleman feels the situation shifting. This isn't just entitlement anymore. This is active obstruction. Ma'am, if you refuse to provide identification, I will place you under arrest for failure to comply. Hayes laughs again, but there's a manic edge to it now. You're going to arrest me. Me. Because I won't show you my ID. Do you know how this is going to look? Coleman remains calm. It's going to look like someone refused a lawful order and got arrested. Pretty standard. Hayes pulls out her phone again. I'm recording this. You're on camera. Coleman points to his chest. So are you. Bodycam. Everything you've said and done is already recorded. Hayes seems momentarily thrown by that, but she recovers quickly. Good. Then everyone will see how you escalated a parking issue into an arrest. Coleman shakes his head. Ma'am, you escalated this. You blocked an ambulance. You refused to move. You refused to identify yourself. Every choice that led to this moment was yours. This is textbook de-escalation language, and Hayes knows it. She can feel the legal ground shifting under her feet. She tries a different approach. Look, can we start over? I'm sorry. I was stressed. Let me just move my car, and we can forget this whole thing. Coleman considers the offer for a moment. If she had said this 3 minutes ago, he might have let her go with a warning. But she's crossed too many lines. She threatened him. She invoked political connections to intimidate him. She refused orders. And most importantly, the ambulance has now been blocked for over 8 minutes. Whatever emergency they're responding to has been delayed by a woman who thinks a board meeting is more important than someone's life. I appreciate the apology, ma'am. But at this point, I still need your license and registration. You're getting cited. Hayes' brief attempt at contrition evaporates. Fine. Cite me. But I'm not giving you my ID. Coleman sighs. Then turn around and place your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. Hayes takes a step back. For what? For failure to identify, obstruction, and refusing a lawful order. Hayes' voice cracks with genuine shock. You can't be serious. Coleman pulls his handcuffs from his belt. Turn around. Hayes' hands come up defensively. Okay. I'll get my license. Just wait. But Coleman has already made the decision. The window for compliance has closed. Ma'am, it's too late. Turn around. Hayes' eyes dart toward her car, then back to Coleman. She's calculating whether she can get in and drive away. Coleman recognizes the look. Don't even think about it. If you get in that car, you're adding evading arrest to your charges. Hayes freezes. Her brain is finally starting to catch up to the reality of the situation. This isn't going away. This isn't getting smoothed over with a phone call. This is happening. Backup arrives in the form of Officer Lisa Chun, a veteran with 15 years on the force. She assesses the scene in seconds. The blocked ambulance. The running Mercedes. The standoff between Coleman and Hayes. Chun approaches Hayes from the side. Ma'am, I'm Officer Chun. I need you to cooperate with Officer Coleman. This doesn't have to get worse. Hayes latches onto Chun like a lifeline. Finally, someone reasonable. Tell him he's overreacting. I was just trying to park. Chun shakes her head. Ma'am, you blocked an emergency vehicle. That's a serious issue. You need to provide your ID and accept the citation. Hayes looks between the two officers, realizing she's not going to find sympathy. This is ridiculous. I'm a healthcare executive. I'm not a criminal. Chun's voice is patient but firm. No one said you're a criminal. But you did break the law. If you cooperate now, this stays a traffic citation. If you keep refusing, it becomes an arrest. Hayes seems to weigh her options. Finally, She reaches into her designer purse and pulls out her wallet. She throws it at Coleman's feet. There. Happy. Coleman doesn't bend down to pick it up. Ma'am, pick that up and hand it to me properly. Hayes stares at him in disbelief. You're kidding. Coleman's expression doesn't change. Pick it up and hand it to me. Hayes' face flushes deep red. She bends down, snatches the wallet, and thrusts it toward Coleman. He takes it, pulls out her license, and radios in her information. The dispatcher confirms the registration and checks for warrants. Clear. No wants or warrants. Hayes hears this and looks vindicated. See, I'm not a criminal. Coleman hands her license back. You're still getting cited for obstructing emergency services and failure to comply. The tow truck is still coming. Hayes takes her license but doesn't put it away. Instead, she steps closer to Coleman again. How much is this going to cost me? Coleman starts writing the citation. Depending on the judge, anywhere from $300 to $1,000. Plus the tow and impound fees. Hayes does the mental math and her face hardens again. That's outrageous. Coleman doesn't look up from his notepad. That's the law. Hayes watches him write, her anger building again. She can't help herself. You know what your problem is? Coleman keeps writing. I'm sure you're going to tell me. Hayes leans in. You're a small person with a little bit of power, and you use it to feel important. You probably weren't athletic. Probably got picked on. And now you get to push people around with a badge and a gun. Coleman finishes writing and looks up. Are you done? Hayes isn't. People like you are why everyone hates cops. You could have just let me move my car. But you had to make this a big deal because it makes you feel like a man. Chin steps in. Ma'am, you need to stop talking. Hayes ignores her. You're a bully. That's all you are. A government-sanctioned bully. Coleman tears the citation from his pad and holds it out. Sign here. Hayes slaps the clipboard out of his hand. It clatters to the concrete. The citation flutters to the ground. Coleman and Chin exchange a glance. That's assault on an officer, Chin says quietly. Hayes realizes what she's done. Her hand goes to her mouth. I didn't mean to. I was just frustrated. Coleman bends down and picks up the clipboard. Ma'am, turn around. Place your hands behind your back. Hayes backs away. No, I'm sorry. I'll sign it. I'll sign it right now. Too late. You just battered me. Turn around. Hayes' professional facade fully cracks. She starts crying. Not the manipulative tears of someone trying to gain sympathy, but the genuine breakdown of someone who has just realized they've destroyed themselves. Please. I can't get arrested. I can't. I have a career. Coleman approaches slowly. You should have thought about that before you hit me. Hayes' voice rises to a shout. I didn't hit you. I knocked the clipboard. Chin moves to Hayes' other side. Ma'am, any unwanted physical contact is battery. You made contact with an object he was holding. That's enough. Hayes looks between them, wild-eyed. This is entrapment. This is you setting me up. Coleman shakes his head. This is you making bad choices. Last chance. Turn around. Hayes makes one final desperate plea. I'm the COO of a major healthcare network. If this gets out, if there's a mugshot, I'll lose everything. My job. My reputation. Everything. Coleman feels a flicker of something almost like pity, but the law doesn't care about someone's job title. Then you should have moved your car when I first asked. Turn around. Hayes finally complies, turning slowly and putting her hands behind her back. Coleman applies the handcuffs, explaining each step as he does. You're under arrest for battery on a law enforcement officer and obstruction of emergency services. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one will be provided for you. Do you understand these rights? Hayes nods, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Her voice is barely a whisper. Coleman guides her toward his patrol vehicle. The ambulance, finally freed by Chun moving the Mercedes out of the way manually with the keys from Hayes' purse, accelerates up the ramp toward the emergency entrance. Whatever crisis they were responding to is now 8 minutes delayed because one woman couldn't accept being inconvenienced. In the back of the patrol car, Hayes sits in stunned silence, staring at the metal grates separating her from the front seat. The handcuffs bite into her wrists. The reality is settling in. She's going to jail. She's going to be booked, fingerprinted, photographed, and it's all going to be public record. The COO of Cascade Health Systems, arrested for battering a police officer in a hospital parking garage. The irony isn't lost on her. She manages healthcare facilities, and she just delayed an ambulance because she didn't want to walk an extra 100 feet from a parking spot. Coleman gets into the driver's seat and starts the engine. Chin radios in their status. 729, we're code 4. Transporting one adult female to booking. Copy that. The drive to the station is silent except for the occasional sniffle from the back seat. Coleman glances in the rearview mirror. Hayes is staring out the window, watching the city go by, perhaps wondering if she'll ever see it the same way again. At a red light, Hayes finally speaks. Can I ask you something? Coleman doesn't turn around. Go ahead. Why didn't you just let me move the car? You could have. You had that power. Coleman considers the question. He could give her the legal answer, that she'd already committed multiple violations, and that de-escalation doesn't mean letting someone walk away from a crime. But he decides to give her the real answer. Because you didn't just block an ambulance. You blocked it, and then told me you didn't care. You made it clear that your time was more important than whoever was in that ambulance. That's not a parking issue. That's a character issue. And I can't fix character with a warning. Hayes absorbs this in silence. After a long pause, she speaks again, quieter this time. I'm going to lose my job. Coleman doesn't disagree. Probably. Hayes lets out a shaky breath. 20 years. I've been building this career for 20 years. Coleman pulls into the station parking lot. Then you should have protected it better. The booking process is clinical and humiliating. Hayes is searched by a female officer, her expensive jewelry placed in a plastic bag. Her designer purse is inventoried. Her phone is taken. She's photographed from multiple angles, holding a placard with her booking number. The flash makes her wince. She's fingerprinted, the ink staining her manicured nails. And then she's placed in a holding cell with 3 other women, all of whom immediately recognize that Hayes doesn't belong there. One of them, a woman in her 20s with faded tattoos, smirks. Corporate type, huh? What did you do, embezzle? Hayes doesn't answer. She sits on the metal bench and stares at the floor. Hours pass. The initial shock gives way to a different emotion, anger. Not at herself, but at Coleman. At the system. At the unfairness of it all. She starts constructing a narrative in her mind where she's the victim. He overreacted. He could have de-escalated. He wanted to arrest me because I'm successful and he's not. This cognitive dissonance is a defense mechanism, a way to protect her ego from the crushing weight of accountability. It's easier to believe the world is against you than to accept that you destroyed yourself. Finally, a guard calls her name. Victoria Hayes. Your bail has been posted. Hayes stands, surprised. Her attorney, Richard Calloway, is waiting in the lobby. He's a sharp-dressed man in his 60s with a reputation for defending high-profile clients. His expression is unreadable. Calloway drives Hayes back to the hospital to retrieve her impounded Mercedes. The tow fee is $650. Hayes pays with a credit card, her hands shaking. In Calloway's car, he finally speaks. Tell me exactly what happened. Hayes recounts the story, carefully framing herself as the victim of an overzealous cop. She emphasizes the ambulance could have gone around. She highlights Coleman's aggressive tone. She conveniently omits the part where she slapped the clipboard out of his hand. Calloway listens without interrupting. When she finishes, he asks a single question. Did you make physical contact with the officer or anything he was holding? Hayes hesitates. I knocked a clipboard out of his hand, but I didn't hit him. Calloway closes his eyes briefly. Victoria, that's battery. Hayes' voice rises. It was an accident. I was frustrated. Calloway shakes his head. It doesn't matter. Intent isn't required for battery. You made offensive contact. That's the statute. Hayes feels the walls closing in again. Can you get it dismissed? Calloway is quiet for a moment. I can try, but you need to prepare for the possibility that this goes to trial. And if it does, that bodycam footage is going to be played in court. Everything you said. Everything you did. Hayes suddenly remembers all the things she screamed at Coleman. The insults. The threats. The invocation of her connections. It's all recorded. Her stomach turns. What are my chances? Calloway pulls up to her Mercedes and parks. Honestly, not good. You refused multiple lawful orders. You blocked emergency services. And you battered an officer on camera. The prosecution has everything they need. Hayes sits in silence. Then what do I do? Calloway looks at her directly. You take a plea deal. Plead down to reckless endangerment and disorderly conduct. Probation. Community service. Anger management. And you pray your employer doesn't see the news coverage. But her employer does see the news coverage. By the next morning, the story is everywhere. COO arrested after blocking ambulance in parking dispute. The bodycam footage, released through a public records request, goes viral. Over 2 million views in 48 hours. The comments section is brutal. People dissect every moment. Every insult Hayes hurled at Coleman. Every entitled statement. The phrase on the COO of Cascade Health Systems becomes a meme. Social media users mock her, creating parody accounts, remixing the footage with satirical commentary. Hayes' LinkedIn is flooded with messages. Her professional reputation, built over 2 decades, collapses in 72 hours. On the 3rd day, she receives a call from the CEO of Cascade Health Systems. Victoria, we need to talk. Hayes knows what's coming. The CEO's voice is cold and formal. The board met this morning. Given the public attention and the nature of the charges, we've decided it's best if you step down effective immediately. Hayes tries to argue. This was blown out of proportion. I'm fighting the charges. The CEO cuts her off. Victoria, you blocked an ambulance at one of our partner hospitals while claiming to represent us. This isn't about the legal case. This is about judgment. And you demonstrated a catastrophic lapse in judgment. Hayes feels tears welling up again. I built this company. I brought in $40 million in funding last year alone. The CEO's tone softens slightly, but remains firm. And we're grateful for your contributions. But this is bigger than your track record. The board's decision is final. We'll issue a press release this afternoon announcing your resignation for personal reasons. Hayes knows there's no point in arguing further. She ends the call and sits in her empty house, staring at the walls. No job, no reputation, a court date looming. All because she didn't want to walk an extra 2 minutes from a parking spot. 3 months later, Hayes stands in a King County courtroom. Her attorney managed to negotiate a plea deal. She pleads guilty to 1 count of obstructing emergency services and 1 count of disorderly conduct. The battery charge is dropped in exchange for her plea and a formal apology to Officer Coleman. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, looks down at Hayes with thinly veiled contempt. Ms. Hayes, I've reviewed the bodycam footage. I've read the police reports. And I've considered your lack of prior criminal history. Normally, I might be inclined toward leniency. But this case troubles me deeply. You're an educated woman. You held a position of significant responsibility. And yet, when faced with a simple request to move your vehicle, you escalated the situation at every turn. You insulted the officers. You invoked your professional status as if it placed you above the law. And most disturbingly, you prioritized your own convenience over a potential medical emergency. Hayes stands silently, her attorney beside her. The judge continues. The sentence is as follows. 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, to be performed at a hospital in a non-administrative capacity. You will work directly with patients and medical staff. Additionally, you will complete an anger management program and write a formal letter of apology to Officer Coleman to be read aloud in this court. Hayes nods, her voice barely audible. Yes, Your Honor. The judge isn't finished. I'm also ordering you to pay restitution to Seattle Grace Medical Center for the delay caused to their emergency services in the amount of $5,000. And finally, I'm imposing a fine of $2,000. Hayes' attorney starts to object, but Hayes puts a hand on his arm. She accepts the sentence without protest. The fight has gone out of her. She just wants this to be over. 6 months into her probation, Hayes is working at a different hospital, Valley Regional Medical Center, as part of her community service. She's been assigned to the oncology ward, helping transport patients, delivering meals, and assisting nurses with non-medical tasks. It's a humbling experience. She's surrounded by people facing life and death battles, and she's reminded daily of how trivial her parking dispute was in comparison. One afternoon, she's helping an elderly woman back to her room after a chemotherapy session. The woman, Mrs. Chun, is weak and nauseous. Hayes supports her gently, moving slowly so as not to cause more discomfort. Thank you, dear, Mrs. Chun says quietly. You're very kind. Hayes helps her into bed and adjusts her pillows. Can I get you anything? Water? Mrs. Chun shakes her head. Just sit with me for a moment, if you don't mind. Hayes sits in the chair beside the bed. Mrs. Chun studies her face. You're not a regular volunteer, are you? Hayes hesitates, then decides on honesty. No, I'm here as part of a court sentence. Mrs. Chun raises her eyebrows, but doesn't seem judgmental. What did you do? Hayes takes a breath. I blocked an ambulance in a parking garage. I was angry and entitled, and I paid the price for it. Mrs. Chun nods slowly. We all make mistakes. The question is what we learn from them. Hayes feels unexpected tears forming. I've learned that I spent 20 years building a career and forgot to build a character. Mrs. Chun reaches out and pats Hayes' hand weakly. Then you've learned the most important lesson there is. They sit in silence for a few minutes. Then Mrs. Chun asks, what will you do when your service is done? Hayes has been thinking about this for months. I don't know. I can't go back to healthcare administration. My reputation is destroyed. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I needed to lose everything to figure out who I actually am. Hayes completes her community service and her probation without incident. The anger management classes force her to confront patterns of behavior she'd ignored for years. The need to control. The inability to tolerate inconvenience. The belief that her time was more valuable than other people's. She writes the apology letter to Officer Coleman and reads it in court as ordered. Officer Coleman, I want to sincerely apologize for my behavior on September 18, 2024. You were doing your job, and I treated you with contempt and disrespect. I blocked an ambulance because I prioritized my schedule over someone's potential medical emergency. I refused your lawful orders. And I physically struck an object you were holding. There is no excuse for any of my actions. I let my ego and my sense of entitlement override my judgment and my humanity. I've spent the last year reflecting on the person I became, and I'm ashamed. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just want you to know that I understand now what I couldn't see then. You weren't targeting me. You were protecting the public. And I made your job harder because I thought I was above the rules. I'm sorry. Coleman, sitting in the gallery, nods once. He doesn't smile or offer any words of acceptance. But Hayes doesn't expect him to. She's not owed forgiveness. She's owed consequences. And she's received them. After the hearing, Hayes walks out of the courthouse a free woman. Her probation is complete. Her debt to society is paid. But the professional consequences linger. She applies for jobs in hospital administration, but every background check reveals her arrest. Every interview ends the same way. We'll be in touch. They never are. 2 years after the incident, Hayes is working as a patient advocate for a small nonprofit that helps uninsured individuals navigate the healthcare system. It's a fraction of the salary she once earned. She lives in a modest apartment instead of the waterfront condo she used to own. Her life is smaller now, but in some ways, it's fuller. She's not managing budgets and attending board meetings. She's helping people. One client, a single mother named Rosa, comes to Hayes in tears. Rosa's son needs surgery, but she has no insurance and no way to pay for it. The hospital is threatening to turn them away. Hayes spends 3 days making calls, filling out forms, and leveraging every connection she still has in the healthcare world. She finds a charitable program that covers the full cost of the surgery. Rosa hugs her, sobbing with gratitude. You saved my son's life. Hayes feels something she hasn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the hollow validation of professional achievement, but the deep, bone-level satisfaction of actually mattering to someone. That night, she thinks about the ambulance she blocked. She wonders who was inside, what emergency they were responding to, whether the 8-minute delay caused harm. She'll never know, but she thinks about it often. It's her penance. One evening, Hayes is at a coffee shop when she sees Officer Coleman in line. Her heart jumps. She considers leaving, but something stops her. She approaches him. Officer Coleman? He turns, recognizes her immediately, and his expression becomes guarded. Miss Hayes. Hayes doesn't try to shake his hand or force a conversation. I just wanted to say thank you. Coleman looks confused. For what? For not letting me get away with it. For holding me accountable. I lost everything, but I needed to. I was a terrible person. And if you'd let me go that day, I'd probably still be that person. Coleman studies her for a moment. You working? Hayes nods. Patient advocacy. Helping uninsured families. Coleman's expression softens slightly. Good. He nods once and turns back to order his coffee. The exchange is brief, but it's enough. Hayes walks out into the Seattle rain, feeling lighter than she has in years. The bodycam footage continues to circulate online. Every few months, it resurfaces on social media, reposted with new commentary. Hayes has learned not to read the comments. But occasionally, someone recognizes her in public. Most people don't say anything. But once, a young man approaches her at the grocery store. Hey, aren't you the lady who blocked the ambulance? Hayes freezes, unsure how to respond. Yeah, that's me. The man studies her face. That was messed up. Hayes nods. I was completely in the wrong. The man seems surprised by her agreement. Are you, still a jerk? Hayes manages a sad smile. I'm trying really hard not to be. The man nods slowly. Cool. And he walks away. It's a small interaction, but it matters to Hayes. She's not trying to escape her past. She's trying to build a future on top of it. 3 years after the incident, Hayes is invited to speak at a crisis intervention training for healthcare administrators. The topic is de-escalation and accountability. She's nervous, but she accepts. Standing in front of 50 executives, many of whom used to be her peers, Hayes tells her story. She holds nothing back. She describes her entitlement, her rage, her complete inability to see beyond her own needs. And she describes the consequences. I lost my job, my reputation, my savings, all because I couldn't accept being inconvenient for 10 minutes. The room is silent. And the worst part? I delayed an ambulance. To this day, I don't know who was in that ambulance. I don't know if my actions hurt anyone. But I know I risked someone's life because I didn't want to walk. Hayes pauses, her voice thick with emotion. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Your title doesn't make you special. Your salary doesn't make you exempt from basic decency. And if you can't handle being inconvenienced without throwing a tantrum, you have no business leading anyone. The audience doesn't applaud. They sit in uncomfortable silence. But later, several people approach her privately to say thank you. One woman, a hospital CEO, shakes Hayes' hand. I needed to hear that. I've been acting like you did. I just haven't been caught yet. Hayes squeezes her hand. Then change now, before you get caught. 5 years later, Hayes has rebuilt a modest career as a consultant for nonprofits. She helps organizations develop patient advocacy programs. She's never going to be a COO again. She's made peace with that. She's dating someone, a teacher named David who knew nothing about her past when they met. When she finally told him the story, he listened without judgment. We've all done things we're ashamed of. The question is whether we learn. Hayes thinks about that ambulance often. She's turned it into a meditation of sorts. Whenever she feels impatience rising, whenever she wants to cut in line or demand special treatment, she thinks about those 8 minutes. She thinks about Officer Coleman's words. Character issue. He was right. The arrest wasn't the problem. It was the symptom. The problem was who she'd become. A person who genuinely believed her time was more valuable than other people's safety. One day, Hayes is at a hospital visiting a client when she sees an ambulance pull up to the emergency bay. She watches the paramedics rush a patient inside, every second counting. And she feels a wave of gratitude that no one like her was blocking the entrance that day. She thinks about all the Victoria Hayes still out there. The people who park in handicapped spots because they're only going to be a minute. The people who scream at service workers because their order is wrong. The people who weaponize their status to avoid consequences. She used to be one of them. She hopes she isn't anymore. That evening, she writes in her journal, a practice her therapist recommended. Today I watched an ambulance save someone's life. 5 years ago, I would have blocked it to save myself 10 minutes. I'm not that person anymore. And I never want to be again. It's not eloquent, but it's true. And for Victoria Hayes, truth is the only currency that matters now. In the end, Victoria Hayes' story is a case study in the cascading consequences of unchecked entitlement. She didn't wake up that morning planning to destroy her career. She didn't set out to delay emergency medical services. She simply believed, in that moment, that her needs outweighed everyone else's. And that belief, compounded by ego and a complete inability to accept authority, turned a traffic violation into a felony arrest. The legal analysis here is straightforward. Blocking emergency vehicle access is a traffic violation in every state. Refusing to provide identification to law enforcement during a lawful stop is a crime. Battering an officer, even by striking an object in their hand, is a felony. Hayes committed all 3 offenses on camera in the span of 8 minutes. But the psychological analysis is more complex. Hayes wasn't a monster. She was a successful professional who had been rewarded for her assertiveness and her refusal to take no for an answer. In the corporate world, those traits made her a high performer. In a parking garage with a cop, those same traits made her a felon. The disconnect between those two realities is what destroyed her. She couldn't code switch. She couldn't recognize that the rules that applied in a boardroom didn't apply when blocking emergency services. The real lesson here isn't about parking or ambulances. It's about the danger of believing your own mythology. When you spend years being told you're important, when every meeting revolves around your schedule and every assistant jumps to accommodate your needs, it becomes easy to forget that you're just another citizen. You're not above traffic laws. You're not immune to consequences. And a badge doesn't work for you. It works for the public. Hayes learned that lesson the hardest way possible. But she did learn it. And maybe that's the one redemptive thread in this story. She lost everything. And she used that loss to become someone better. Most people don't get that chance. Most people double down. They hire lawyers to fight the charges. They blame the officers. They refuse to accept responsibility. Hayes eventually did accept it. Not immediately. Not gracefully. But she got there. Could she have avoided this entire catastrophe? Absolutely. All she had to do was move her car when Officer Coleman first asked. 8 minutes. That's all that separated Victoria Hayes the COO from Victoria Hayes the convicted felon. 8 minutes of ego. What would you have done if you were Officer Coleman? Would you have let her move the car, or would you have done exactly what he did? Let me know your thoughts in the comment. Do remember to hit the subscribe button, like and share this story, and I'll see you in the next one.